Kelly. I'm a retired firefighter paramedic and former psych ER nurse. I'm here today to talk about Resilience Standard 11, ABCs. In this context, ABC stands for Activating Event, Belief, and Consequence. It's a tool that allows us to increase our self-awareness, to understand our habitual and patterned reactions to triggers, and to pause in that moment to create the space to reconsider and to choose a different course of action, a different response, so that we can get a better outcome than what we might have with our traditional responses. When we look at the ABC tool, it's interesting in that what it really does is it gives us greater self-control. And as responders and healthcare workers, we are all about control. We like to feel like we're in charge and like we can handle things. ABCs is a really simple tool for us to better manage ourselves to achieve the outcomes we want to. When we think about stress, we're often focused on the external events, the thing we think caused our stress. But actually, stress doesn't come from the external events as much as it does our internal stories, our narrative, our beliefs. It's what's running in our heads that triggers our reactions and our emotional responses to things. One of the interesting points for us in these high stress professions is that the more stressed and the more hypervigilant we are, the less resilient we are, and the more likely we are to interpret neutral stimuli as threats, causing us to be reactive and defensive, many times in ways that aren't at all constructive or helpful to us. Utilizing ABC as a tool in the moment can really help us increase that awareness and pause and change the course of our interaction with an event or another person. So looking at the activating event, what we want is to recognize, I am being triggered. That's the first step. The second is, why am I being triggered and what am I telling myself that's adding fuel to this fire? The third is to think about, how do I want to react in this moment, whether I'm feeling anger or aggression or hostility or offended. And is that really going to put me where I want to be? Am I going to feel good in the moment and feel real bad later? And if I am, what can I do to change that? So there's a couple of different steps with the ABCs. The first is when experiencing an intense emotional reaction, and usually the warning to us is the reaction's way out of sync with the actual trigger, the external event. Ask, what reaction am I having? Because lots of times we just lump things into vague categories. I'm angry. Well, lots of times we're not angry. We might be feeling something way more nuanced, and recognizing what it is lets us know why we got triggered. Another thing is to recognize what triggered me. What specifically about this event? Was it what somebody said? Was it something that I saw? Was it something I overheard? Then asking, what story am I telling myself? Because the narrative in our heads like that, as soon as we get triggered, the story is rolling. And the stories are usually pretty negative unless we intervene to change them to something more positive. The next is to pause and think about, what were the outcomes of my reaction last time I was in this situation? What might be the outcomes of my reaction if I keep going down the path that I'm on right now? And then to ask, are there any changes that I can make? Can I do something differently right now to achieve an outcome that's more helpful to me, that's a better outcome for me personally, to change the consequence to something that's positive, not negative? So to give an example, I'm a retired firefighter paramedic. Let's say I'm in the bay one morning, I'm checking out the equipment, and the rest of my crew's in the station. I'm starting to feel bad. And I think, what am I feeling? I'm feeling angry. Well, no, if I think about it a little bit more, it's not really anger, it's resentment. All right, what triggered this feeling of resentment in me? It's that I'm out here checking the rig and the crew's in the station, the rest of the crew grabbing coffee. I'm out here by myself. All right, what story am I telling myself? And we all know the stories we tell ourselves. It's the always and the nevers and the shoulds. I'm always out here by myself. This always happens. They don't care. They're not doing their job. They expect me to carry all of the weight. I'm the only one here who's, the story goes on and on. So really just pouring fuel onto that fire. So the resentment's getting stoked higher and higher. Next step would be to think about, what's going to be the outcome if I just sit out here stewing in this toxic soup that I'm creating? And I'm telling myself this horrible story about my crew, and I'm going through the equipment by myself. What's going to happen the rest of the shift? Well, I'm probably going to be resentful. I'm probably going to be passive aggressive towards my partner, or let's be realistic, probably just outright aggressive. And it's not going to be a good shift. It's going to color the rest of my day, the rest of my experiences with everybody else. They're not going to understand why I'm upset. So they're going to react back to me unless they're using ABCs. But so then the next step, the thing that is really key and the thing that ABCs are really good at is to ask myself, are there any changes I can make to get me a better outcome so the rest of the shift isn't already going to suck and I'm not going to have a strained relationship with my crew? Yeah. What can I do? I could stop going through the equipment by myself, go into the station, grab a cup of coffee in a friendly and casual manner, just say, hey, it seems like some of the equipment's gotten moved by the other crews. Hey, partner, hey, buddy, would you mind coming out with me and going through it just so we both know where everything is? That's one of my big fears is we're going to run on a critical call and I'm not going to know where things are. And I think some of the drugs are expiring now. Can you come out and be my witness for the NARC box so we can go through and make sure we're up to date on everything? Another thing I'm just really nervous about. I'd really appreciate it if you could come help me. At that point, most likely the outcome's going to be, yeah, sure. We go out, we get everything done. I feel better. He or she doesn't feel slighted, and the day goes on and the shift is way better than if I had just allowed myself to listen to the stories in my head and to stoke my resentment. So ABCs, it's not a complicated tool, and the more we use it, like any other tool, the more adept we get at using it, the faster we recognize we're being triggered. We recognize why, we know if it's out of proportion or not, and we can find a conscious alternative route before we say the thing, do the thing, hit send, and then get filled with regret or shame or embarrassment afterward when we weren't really coming from our best place. In summary, one of the quotes that we found that we think just really encapsulates ABC as a tool in its own right comes from Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who is one of the founders of existential theory. He wrote that everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in a given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. And the most impactful thing about that statement is he didn't think about it while he was sitting in an armchair smoking a cigar. He fabricated this theory and made that quote while he was in a concentration camp as a prisoner. And if he could see this potential and if he could exert the control over his reactions during such a time of overwhelm and stress and mistreatment, we can also do it in our lives. So that's ABC. It's a great tool. It's a great way to increase our resilience, in large part because we're not adding to our stress load inadvertently. Thanks.